We're diving straight into our next session. Mr. Sandeep Aneja, who is the managing partner at Kaizen, will now take the stage. And he'll be talking on solving an education problem or creating a tech product. What the question is, what the implicit struggles are that are faced by an entrepreneur in this regard. So,
good afternoon, everyone. Wishing you all like a very happy Valentine's Day. I had to say that. Happens to be my anniversary as well, so I'm wishing myself a happy anniversary as well. But nice to have you all here and be in the midst of some very smart people who are probably better suited to be here, and I'm better suited to be there. But this is my chance to talk to you a little bit about some of the lessons we've learned about investing and growing EdTech companies. So one of the things that I'd like to point you towards is the fact that the age gap and the digital age gap between the teachers and the students is much more visible today than ever before, where essentially we are able to realize that the understanding of digital technology and the use in classrooms by teachers is a representation of what they grew up with, and it's really hard to bridge the digital divide with a child who on a daily basis uses a device for multiple other uses that a teacher cannot even fathom. So there is an issue there, and generally while we might laugh at hashtags and @ signs and ampersands, that's where the world is headed, and the lingo is entirely different. And lingo is a representation of the way the child's mind works. I skipped a slide, I'll come back to that towards the end. So a bit of an introduction to Kaizen. We are an education-focused investment fund. We invest in the region of South and Southeast Asia now. We used to be an India-focused fund when we first started. We've invested in about 14 companies now, all in India, of which there are 4 education technology companies. Although I don't know if this message has been delivered this morning, but we don't think there is going to be in the near future anything such as education technology or education. It's going to be all education. Education technology will subsume itself into education as it becomes an integral part, whether the delivery is online or offline, and companies will have to exist with a deep understanding of living online and offline in one way or the other. So we invest in Singapore, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and India being the largest focus for us. Our offices are in Bombay, and we also have offices in other countries including Singapore. The companies that we've invested in include Topper, which you may have heard of. It is an analytics-based teaching learning platform for children around the ages of 10 to 17, 18. Impartus, that enables universities and institutions to go online, to capture lectures, to bring the content online, and to create peer-to-peer learning networks across university boundaries. VizIQ, which works with small, medium, and large enterprises to bring them online, and there is a recent push towards that which has accelerated the growth of our company. And Get Ahead, which enables, like the 2U model, enables universities to go online. Any case, just going back and talking a little bit about EdTech, there is a large consumer base. Significant amount of income is spent on education, particularly in emerging markets. There is a significant growth in students who are receiving outside tutoring. This supplemental learning market is a critical test bed for EdTech right now, and a lot of the companies that have done well in this domain. So I'll quickly belabor this point and identify the difference between nice to have solution and a must have solution, or high stakes versus low stakes. A lot of companies that have done well in education, or whether it's education technology, often find high competition in high stake domains such as test preparation, and often they end up entering the market through a low stakes position and migrate their way into high stakes position, and that's perhaps a more cost effective method of growing a company for most, as opposed to getting straight into high stakes and creating a brand which takes over the existing brands which may be local or national. There is a significant amount of learning taking place on the mobile devices. I don't have to go into data for that right now. Language learning is taking off. What we're realizing is that the markets are unsaturated and the path of growth is high, particularly when education is becoming digital, learning is taking place online, analytics are coming in, AR, VR is seeping in, and in fact, Today I was reading an article, a gentleman called Tom Vander Ark, his tweet this morning spoke of the fact that machines are becoming emotionally aware. And when we used to speak of machines not being emotionally aware, I think that path has, is in our back. I'm in fact currently trying to learn machine learning online with Andrew Ng of Coursera. And it is an amazing opportunity to realize how simplified things are today in even programming a machine. As a student in engineering college decades ago, I would fail to write a proper C++ program because I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't taught computer programming ever. On your own you would fail. But today as an average person trying to program a machine with a high-level language like Octave or R, you can totally do it. And you can feel like you accomplished something. So the possibility of an individual person getting closer to a machine and a long earbuds with wires going closer to our ears and vanishing into our ears is becoming real. So human-machine interface will be a significant part of our learning as well in the future. A point I want to bring to entrepreneurs and investors is that there is a significant difference between the success rates of startups in emerging markets versus US, for example. In US, startups generally have a stronger ecosystem that supports them, and there's a 2 to 5% chance that they'll be more successful than 2 to 5 times chance that they'll be more successful than startups which start in emerging markets such as India. And that is true because a lot of the ecosystem support does not exist. There are headwinds which get in front of the company, starting from resources, technology platforms, cost management, everything that you can imagine gets in the way. And therefore, starting a company and a startup EdTech in Asia or India is way harder than starting in US, right? The market's less forgiving here. So how do we then, in a benign manner, look at education to start with? So as investors, when we are first presented with a plan, although we look at a very mercenary solution, a pointed solution to the problem that the company might be tackling, we really want to unearth the underlying thesis behind the problem being tackled. If an entrepreneur presents to us a solution that is essentially a really good hammer looking for a nail, a really good kind of a solution looking for a problem, but the solution is amazing, the technology looks great, the interface looks great, the presentation is awesome, but ultimately realize there is no nail, there is no problem or significant problem, then that's an issue. And often, about 70–80% of the times, it is really a product-driven thinking process that comes to light, where we see entrepreneurs who present to us situations where they've found an incredible product which doesn't yet have a proper solution, ahead of time, misplaced, not properly positioned, not properly priced. The way we think about a startup's job in a very altruistic way is to solve a big problem. Let me sort of define that really quick. Suppose a startup is solving the problem of teaching learning, quality and access, like Topper, Byju's, etc. If you take the problem all the way back to its core, what they are really trying to do is to really bring affordable and quality and standardized learning process-based education to the masses. That is a problem. So that it is not about saying that I'm using AI to bring you better quality concept in a certain area. That is not a problem. That is not a problem that sustains itself over social boundaries. We need to be able to solve something bigger because that is the job of education. If we are solving a massive issue, then we might have to look at the whole problem from a bigger perspective. And that's what we look for in entrepreneurs, where we can invest in education, improve skills, drive better knowledge for the economy, and create employment and drive higher economic growth through more inclusiveness, through more inclusion, gender inclusion, age inclusion, socio-economic inclusion. So we've come across in the process of owning the mindset of owning a market in EdTech which is forming, we've come across a couple of different methods of investing in education companies. And you might also as an entrepreneur realize that you are subscribing to one of them where you quickly put together a product which solves a problem reasonably okay. Generally there's an existing offline market. Again, supplemental learning, tuition market exists, it's locally present, there are teachers who deliver training. The product you create immediately solves a small problem locally, but it's not the best product. It is superficial, it is not deep enough yet. There is no clear tech leader in that market and the brand awareness for everybody is okay. although there are big offline leaders that you have to take over. Then over time, you end up starting in marketing because you realize you don't want to spend on product yet. You want to win on the marketing basis. You create customer market dominance, and then you use the ability of having that capital with you to drive product creation or make product free, make content free, whatever you might want to do. Once you have the kitty and you market awareness, you can play with the product side a little bit better. It's okay. This is one method of building a company which we call the fear of missing out. So you're building a company on the basis of the fact that you're telling people, if you do not participate with us and if you do not invest with us as an investor, you will miss out on something. The other method is learning outcomes driven. It's slightly slower. It's slightly rooted in getting the problem identified and solved in a better manner with a better fit of a product from the very beginning. And it's a philosophical difference between the two types of companies that makes them either exciting to one investor or the other. Again, here we see same market opportunity, but we see a strong focus on solving the problem with a directed, very well tested product. And in this case, you will identify, differentiate the quality of learning very, very early on. And in a comparative basis, the Net Promoter Score, NPS, for a product of this type will be way higher than the NPS for a product in the previous case. And there the marketing spend lags product spend. Marketing spend lags the word of mouth that's created based on better quality product. Either is fine. You've got to figure out what you bank. So as we start looking at companies from a more performance basis, we start also examining some of their performance metrics. These metrics are general, but many of them are very critical, and there are many others which we haven't yet covered because this goes on for a couple of other pages. Revenue growth is critical. If you're a small company in B2B versus B2C EdTech, there are different revenue traction levels you should have. Within B2B, are you dealing with the SME, small medium enterprise market, or the larger market? And what size company are you? If you're a $2 million revenues company and you're growing at 30%, something's wrong, whether you're B2B or B2C. If you're a $5 million company and you're growing 100% a year, something's okay, as long as you're not throwing money to the masses in the process of growing. You've got to figure out how profitable you might be in the future, whether a business model is all about throwing money and getting revenues. MAUs, monthly active users, daily active users, common, but WhatsApp, for example, has DAU of 70%, which is significant. Could we beat that with another EdTech product remains to be seen, but that'll be great. Today we speak about activity as a measure of intensity and as a measure of retention of students as well. So this is a very high number, but the trick in here is to help define the activity very thoughtfully. It cannot be 30 minutes a week. It cannot be on average 5 minutes a day. It cannot be that. It has to really be about what activity can the human being, a person learning, can complete in that 5-minute or a 30-minute period. If it is about reading a paragraph in 5 minutes, it's highly inactive. It's about really going through 30 questions in 5 minutes. If you could do that, that's active enough, if the pool of questions is available to the person. So it has to be a relative number in the context of what you're trying to solve. Churn rates are critical because ultimately, if you are buying customers and you are unable to retain them and the annual churns exceed 45-50%, you're in trouble, no matter which business you are in. Net Promoter Score is a critical number. I think it plays out really well from a product and service perspective. We encourage all our companies to go out and have a mirror to their faces through this number, and the number has to grow up between 10 to 30%, which is a good acceptable range, to 30 to 50%. Some of our companies have achieved 50% plus, and they, by the way, are the best performers in the portfolio because their brand name continues to perpetuate and everybody speaks well of them. So customer service quality is critical. CAC LTV, it is a very important number, customer acquisition cost divided by the lifetime ratio. We all deal with it. Accurately measuring it requires that we put all the acquisition cost elements into the CAC number, marketing, sales, all of it. Viral coefficient, can you build a product which essentially gets you at least 1% new customers through the word of mouth created by the existing ones? So why do we like that? And I want to tie this back to a more altruistic thinking process. That's why we are here. We're not here to just build the next best product. We're here to solve a problem. and to make an IRR. And we can achieve both together if we leverage the drivers of cost and drivers of revenues. As one of the methods is what we put together. There might be multiple other ways to think about this, where ultimately we're driving word of mouth, reducing cost of acquisition, entering new markets, managing better operations in a better manner, reducing transaction cost, through that driving lower cost, higher revenues. Before we go on, and I'll share these slides, so I think Utkarsh has these slides. So one of the things that we're dealing with as we talk to entrepreneurs now is an element of UDL. So a lot of the entrepreneurs come to us who have not done an EdTech product and speak a lot about how should we define the product, how should we design the product, what the process should look like, what the end result should look like. So we point them towards, I think, really amazing study with the US Department of Education. You should all look at it. There is a hyperlink in this. Go have a look. It is really about representing, expressing, and engaging all your learners through a thinking process which is based and built into the product. So if you can build all these elements into the product and the question answer, the flow of lesson plans, all of that into this, I think you can change lives and be inclusive. That's it. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to take questions now or later, whenever.
Just one question. You talked about the two methods people follow, but where do you see, like from your portfolio or otherwise, where do you see people making more revenues? Which method is working better for them?
I think it goes to the personality of the founder to a great extent and the risk-taking ability. So either is fine with us, right? So if the founder's ability is that they can win the market before they have much of product growth going on, that's up to them. But if you believe that that's a person that can play that game of building a brand only for so long, but they ultimately fall back on the product, then encourage them to just get things right before they go out and talk too much about them. So we have been usually faulted with, and we were usually betting on companies which get things right as opposed to, but that's not neither right nor wrong. It is what it is.
Thank you. I have a question. Thank you, Sandeep. It was a very insight-generating, thought-provoking session. Here I am, if you want to look at my face. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, there's a question. There's a lot of growth in the market happening at the K-12 space and also in the corporate space. To my understanding, Hindi content is growing 12 times faster than English content in my country. And there's a huge space around entrepreneurship where there's nobody is available to take care of them. And that space is completely missing. The space where a lot of entrepreneurs wants to understand and learn management and business lessons. We don't find any large player existing in the market. Everybody's trying to tap B2B2C, which is corporates, or B2B2C, which is schools, college, institution. I build a product, go to a college, sell to the students. I build a product, go to the corporate, sell to employees. But this is a large B2C market where catching every individual, and the number of the market size is close to about 35 crores, including those Indian entrepreneurs who are also staying abroad global. And so, especially in the Hindi content space, what kind of future do you think, and why do you think this market has not been taken care of till now?
So I think this is a question that we should ask other people who are investors and entrepreneurs as well, because it is a very subjective answer. But if you look at where the tea leaves are today and how they seem to fall, basically what we will realize is that everything that can be a viable market, that was a potential viable market, had to have two elements to it. The pain had to be severe, and the pain had to be paid for by the learner, by the individual, right? If there's an intermediate today, it's because the learner is unwilling to pay because of the lack of their own ability to identify quality, or they don't have access. Now the quality and access elements are being broken due to technology. So for the first time, an entrepreneur who wants to learn in Hindi how to manage their own cost base in a business that they're operating and they want to grow, they always had that need, but they didn't know how to get access to that knowledge. Today, maybe because of access and quality being broken down barriers due to technology, they can get that knowledge. So that's possible. The good news about EdTech coming of age in India today is that for the first time, There's always a wave that investors go in, right? There's a huge B2B wave when we are a little bit cautious, then there's a generally followed up by that, there's a B2C wave. We are in that wave now. There'll be a lot of money invested in B2C companies like that in the next 5 years, and much of that will be lost. Some of that will create big winners, but the money lost doesn't mean that it hasn't created a market on its own. It will create a market. So my belief is that micro markets like this, which have a severe pain point, that's not for me to assess, that's for you to assess, and have a desire and people's willingness to pay, will disintermediate corporate training, will disintermediate school-based learning. School-based learning is already being disintermediated to a great extent. It's, in fact, I've been tracking startups in the school-based learning space because that's closer to our investment focus right now. And every 3 months to 6 months, there are new startups which are coming out in local markets, the top 5 cities, which you hadn't heard of before, and they are gaining brand traction. So I think there is, when they were in a brand awareness study, we saw, let's say, a total of 10 companies, 12 companies across 5 cities in India. Now we see 18 to 20 companies, of which 5 were not even there 6 months ago. And they are making 5-10 crores revenues and growing. Right? So I think making 10 crore revenues today is not a big deal in a small domain as well. How do you scale that to hundreds? And that's possible. So I'm very hopeful that the answer to your question is yes. But of course the problem has to be severe, problem has to be worth solving, and the person has to be willing to pay. That has to be identified. So very general answer, but I hope that helps. No, I don't know, right off the bat, I don't. I can connect separately, I guess, right?
Thank you for the questions, audience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.